Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you all. Thank you so much for joining today's Open Learning webcast. Today's webcast is brought to you by Juniper Open Learning, and our session is entitled Building a Juniper EVE-NG Lab-Environment for Daily Usage. My name is Christine Karkalius, and I'm a program manager based out of our headquarters in Sunnyvale, California. I manage the Open Learning program, which consists of the free courses and free resources that are available to you through the Juniper Learning portal. So I won't go through the usual introduction that I do with our exam preparation webcast because I really want to maximize your time with our demo today. But I'll be popping in here and there to help facilitate today's session. So we have actually been planning this webcast since last year, and we had so much to include in the agenda that we actually broke it up into 3 sessions. The objective of this whole series is to guide you through the process of building your very own EVE-NG Juniper Lab. But today's first session will be covering the concept of EVE-NG, and then we'll explain some of the setup basics, and then we'll go through the actual installation process live to show you exactly how to set up the server as a foundation for your lab. So I will be recording this webinar. I'll be sending a link to everyone that has registered for the session and make that recording available for 7 days. And since we are in webinar mode, please don't be shy. Utilize the chat window to ask any questions you might have. I saw we already have one question right before I started the recording, which is great. Keep those questions coming. That way we can really tailor the session based on your the topics that you want to learn more about. Okay, so between Christian and myself and some of the staff from EVE-NG, we'll make sure to address any questions that you might have on the chat. And I think I've said enough. I'd like to introduce today's presenter. Christian Scholz is somewhat of a celebrity in the Juniper community. He is a senior consultant in network and security, and he's a part of our very elite group of Juniper ambassadors. And he's also a Juniper Ingenious champion. And he has an awesome blog, which you can find here. I'll copy and paste the links towards the end of the webcast. And he's also helped author a couple of the Juniper Day 1 books. So without further ado, thank you, Christian, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. I will go ahead and stop sharing so that you can take over from here.
Right, thank you very much. And yeah, thank you guys for joining. Welcome to our to today's session. There was a very huge amount of people approaching me asking again how to set up the EVE-NG solution, how to handle the templates, how to create custom templates. So yeah, the idea was to create not only an hourly session where I can talk about some of the stuff, but really go through the process from conceptioning, what kind of a lab do I need, what things do I want to do with the lab, up to the point how to customize templates. So that's why we have the 3-part series. And as you can see in the chat, parts 2 and 3, they will be next week and the day after next week. So make sure to check that out. So why EVE-NG and why virtual labs at all? When I started in 2016 to become JNCIE security, my main concern was that building a huge lab in hardware is not only really expensive, but also consumes a lot of resources. Like you need a lot of power for all those devices. They make a hell of a noise. Sometimes when you're labbing at work, you have to share it with some of your colleagues, and some of them all of a sudden patch different things because they have a lab of their own to do. And that was really, really hard to get into the state where you just have your lab and can access it wherever you want, whenever you want. So that's why I decided, okay, let's try to do at least part of the labs virtual. When I started, that was with ESXi back then. So I started to create all the virtual SRXs. It was mostly the Firefly back then. But I quickly realized for every connection between 2 interfaces, I had to create vSwitches. so traffic would not interfere with each other. And that was a huge amount of connections that I had to do. So it was very, very hard to see what bridge will affect what interface. And that's when I started to look around what other solutions were available. And that's when I found out about EVE-NG. So with EVE-NG, you have the ability to not only save a lot of power and rack space by virtualizing your lab, but you don't need to look at the V switches in the underlay anymore. You simply use some drag and drop features. You simply click the virtual devices that you want to connect. You select the interface that you want, and that's it. EVE will take care of the rest. And there was something that was really, really cool when I found out about that, because that makes creating labs and using labs extremely easy and flexible. Back when I started, there was only one edition available, the community edition. That is what we'll be installing today, because I think most of you start with the community edition that's available for free. And then there's also a pro edition that I will go more into the sessions 2 and 3, because there are some features that you definitely want to use if you're labbing every day with EVE-NG. So yeah, basically that's when I started to create all these labs and basically save more and more of that hardware space, and noise, and everything that comes with it. The next thing that was really, really cool about EVE-NG is I can access it via my web browser. So I have a very restrictive work laptop. Of course, security is everywhere. So I can't necessarily install any client. I have to ask if I need to install some things. So being able to access the lab from virtually everywhere without installing anything, even if I'm at a, I don't know, at a hotel and have a shared PC with me, that was something that I found really, really cool, and that's very, very handy. So you don't need any more of these fat clients. You can simply access it from everywhere. Nowadays, there's also, with the Pro Edition, I will also go into that later, there are some more benefits, like you have a full virtual desktop solution, so to speak, where you can also upload your PDFs that you work with, and basically create your own library of working. But yeah, that was basically the goal for me. And also, it was very easy for the other colleagues as well to use the same server, simply create their own labs, and we did not interfere each other anymore. So that made it really, really cool and flexible for me when I started with all this labbing. And I think to get a bit of a feeling, I think we have one of the polls prepared, because I want to know if you're thinking about these labs or these lab solutions. Where are you running your labs usually? I mean, is noise and power consumption a concern for you? Or do you also run it mostly at home, where power and noise matters a lot? So it would be great to just get a feeling. Yeah, and while the poll is running, also if you're using these virtual, okay, most of you use it at home. Yeah, I thought so. So yeah, power usage and noise is quite a big concern. So you usually don't have a full-blown rack at home. So having a powerful server to run EVE-NG on will save you a lot there. Also, when I started with these virtual lab ideas, I quickly realized that I could use these features and spinning up a machine very, very quick, that I could use it to test some new designs and some new features that I wouldn't have been able to easily test necessarily at work, because again, I would need some hardware. Usually I have to tell the other guys I need the hardware just to validate a config or try out a new feature. If you are in a larger group, that can get a bit complicated. So with the EVE solution, because you have your separate lab space and you have your personal lab space, that's not a problem anymore. Share the results, right? So yeah, especially for testing stuff, for labbing up new features, for certification, obviously. That is really something that will benefit a lot. Like nowadays, there is the AATP, so the All-Access-Pass. So when you're starting to book a course and you have some labs from Juniper, you can simply recreate them in EVE-NG. And even if the course has been 3, 4, 5 weeks away, simply upload it to your EVE again and start labbing again, start building that again. There are, of course, the Juniper V-Labs. And there are some great topologies out there. I can definitely recommend them. But if you're going into like an interoperable test, or if you're going to create a huge lab, usually that's a lot easier with EVE-NG, because the hard disk requirements alone are a bit different. Like I said, most of you will probably start with the community edition. So we will today install the community edition of EVE, but the Pro from an install perspective is not that different. So I think that will be perfectly fine. And at the end of this presentation, I will jump into the live mode where we simply configure everything and install the server so that you can see how easy it is to install EVE on your server. What I also mentioned a bit earlier, it's vendor neutral. So let's say you have a customer that is migrating from, let's say, Aruba to Juniper, or from Cisco to Juniper. Usually some of the vendors offer some sort of virtualization tools, but they are just for this specific vendor. So if you try to combine 2 vendors to test the migration steps, that can get quite challenging. So with EVE, you don't have that problem. You simply spin up both of your nodes, and then you're good to go. Then you have those 2 vendors in. That's not a big problem. As long as you have these images, you're fine. And EVE itself is based on KVM. So almost every vendor has images for KVM. So as long as that's the point, you're good to go. And especially for Juniper, everything I can think of, well, except there's no VEX, but a VQFX is available also in a format of either an ISO file that you can install on a KVM-based system, or a KVM image that you can upload to your EVE and then start labbing. And what also makes EVE great is it's very flexible, especially with the Pro Edition. Now that we have a so-called cluster feature, we'll talk about that in just a moment, where you can combine those different options that you have. You can have your bare metal server at your co-location. You can have a small VM running somewhere in the data center, or maybe on your workstation as a control master node. You can spin up a server in the cloud. There are a lot of options available how to spin up EVE, and you can connect all of them. So you don't need that if you're labbing at home. Usually with the home labs, money is also a big point. So it might be more performant to buy 3 of the cheaper servers to achieve more than with a more powerful but way more expensive server. So it always depends, of course, because with more expensive servers come more CPU cores and bigger labs. So that is something that you need to look at, and we're covering that in just a moment. But basically it's very flexible now to, even with some smaller boxes, create a huge lab, because you can share all those loads that you have across all these servers. Now, there are some design considerations that you need to look at when you're trying to start with your EVE server. It basically comes down to 3 things: CPU, RAM, and HDD. But the enemies that you will fight in your everyday battle for labbing is CPU and the hard disk. Hard disk, because usually if you have a lot of nodes and a lot of versions, space can get a little tight. So you also need to make sure to clean up your disks from time to time. But mostly it's the CPU that is the problem, because we're basically virtualizing these devices. And you only have a certain amount of virtual cores available. And if you oversubscribe them in a great manner, your lab will become unresponsive, and then you won't have any benefit at all. And you're just fighting against your EVE server, who is overwhelmed by the number of nodes that you're trying to spin up. So you need to really make sure, and you need to really check what you want to achieve. And based on that, you pick a server with the necessary CPU, RAM, and hard disk. Also, you should keep in mind that this could change during the time. I mean, back then we had the Firefly, that was a very, very light image of the SRX. Nowadays, with the full-blown VSRX 3.0, hard disk, CPU, and RAM have some other requirements, and you can't go that low because certain features will break if you go below a certain threshold. So always make sure to also check the data sheets, especially for the V devices. What hardware resources do they need? I mean, you can usually use the smallest editions if you're just planning something and just designing something. But again, it depends. If you also want to try some throughput tests, then maybe the smallest box isn't the one that you need, and you need a bigger one. So there are a lot of things to consider when you're doing that. And also with EVE, we have also a commit system, by the way. So this is what you see down here. There is a what I call the store, where basically all of your images, all of your nodes are uploaded. And then usually you have a lot of versions, like for the VSRX, like let's say you have the 17.3, the 18.2, and the 21.4. Now you start to create your labs. And basically, since EVE works with a commit system and snapshots, a part of that disk will be copied to the respective node. So that is what I mean with you need a lot of hard disk space, because especially if you have stuff like a full-blown Abstra, Juno Space, JATP, stuff like that, that is some really, really hard disk intensive stuff. And especially if you're using multiple copies of that, hard disk can get full very, very quickly. And you might not even realize how quickly. So again, always make sure that you plan a bit ahead, and also think of, don't plan too tight. Throw some disks, just throw some disks in, and be fine, and don't be sorry later. Of course, you can also upgrade your server, but if you're planning that, plan for a bit more, because usually once you start labbing, it's kind of like a drug. You start to get addicted to it, and all of a sudden you find yourself all night labbing, trying out new stuff and trying out all the new amazing features that come out. And also, this will be also covered in the second and in the third part. You have the option, once you have this copy somehow edited, then you can simply commit it back, so that you have, let's say you prepare your Active Directory, for example, so that you can always start from that point. But that is something that parts 2 and 3 will also cover. So like I said, especially with this data grave thing, make sure that you clean your stuff from time to time. Recently, I ran into the hard disk image problem, where I thought, why is my disk full? And then I realized, okay, I have 27 beta versions of Junos lying around somewhere. I have let's say Junos 15 lying around somewhere, stuff that I don't use anymore. So I simply cleaned up the old versions. Everything was fine, but always make sure, especially if you're using it for a long, long time, to also clean up the old stuff. And that's also the number of those EVE nodes. It will get quite messy if you have a lot of them, and especially if you're trying to pinpoint a specific version on the file system. So it's always good to minimize them. Also, you need to check, do you need, like I said, some more resources, some satellites, so an EVE cluster. Do you have 3 small servers that you want to combine? Then you need a pro license, that is clustering. Then you need to consider, do you just want to test EVE-NG? Then I would go for the VM version. Or am I planning to lab every day? Then I would go for the bare metal version, because the bare metal has way more power. Usually when folks switch from the VM to the bare metal, they later report up to 3 to 5 times more performance. So making that switch is something that really benefits the performance, but that also makes this server entirely and only available for EVE. So if you're just trying something out at work and you have an ESXi cluster, just spin up a VM, test some stuff, maybe with some of the lighter images. And once you say, okay, I'm ready, now I want to do the big lab, then you can switch to the bare metal. That is what we'll be installing today. So there are these flavors that I mentioned. Basically, with every virtualization step or with every tier that you use in virtualization, your performance gets impacted at least by half, usually 3 to 4 times, or in some cases even 5 times. So you really want to make sure to have your V device as close to your hardware as possible. And as you can see in the top with the bare metal server, you have your hypervisor, so your EVE-NG, your Ubuntu is directly accessing the hardware. It's installed on the server. And on top of that, you're virtualizing your Juniper devices. Now, if you have ESXi, for example, as you can see, there's a hypervisor in between. So you already have a tier more, and even if it's just a low latency tier, that will impact your performance. So your Juniper device now has to talk to the EVE. The EVE has to talk to the hypervisor, and the hypervisor has to talk to the hardware, and vice versa. So with every tier you add, you will lose performance. And the worst thing you could do is what I call the EVEception. If you're having a Windows client that is running on some VMware workstation, or even worse, a ESXi on a workstation, and inside of that is an EVE-NG, and inside of that is a Juniper device, and then all of a sudden you think, why is my VQFX so slow, or why is my VMX not booting up at all? These are usually the pitfalls that come with this. And maybe we can start the second poll. So some of you, I figured, are already using EVE-NG, and what are you using? Do you already use the hardware or the virtual one, or do you use a different solution like GNS or plain KVM? That is something that we can. Perfect. And while the poll is running, and like I mentioned, there is also that's basically the flavor that you cannot affect that much. That's the EVE running on cloud services. We assume that there is the EVE that can directly talk to the hardware, but usually there's also some, at least ESX, Proxmox, or whatever in between. So again, with the cloud, the benefit of these cloud devices is you have a lot of CPU and RAM available in just seconds. The not so good part is your wallet will burn in the exact same rate as your vCPU costs are increasing. So especially if you're doing these cloud labs, be careful, the cost can get quite expensive. So yeah, most of you use virtual labs. Yeah, I figured. Nowadays, most of us do. And again, the good part is if you are using such a solution, you can even combine that. You can say, okay, I usually have smaller labs. I'm using my small server that I have somewhere laying around. And if I need to do a big lab like once a year, or I have one customer demanding that, then you can simply spin up one of the cloud servers if you don't have a powerful server that you can run it on. And then you're good to go. And like I mentioned, what is the EVE cluster? Basically, it's a group of EVE servers sharing the resources. There is always one so-called master instance, and the others are called the satellites. And the satellites are controlled by the master node, and you're always working with the master node. The satellites are basically just resources that you add over and over again. Between them, they are secured by WireGuard, so the traffic is encrypted, everything is safe. And under the hood, in case you're interested, it's VXLAN tunnels between the nodes. So that's how they communicate with each other. For this cluster solution, you need a pro license. That is 99 euros a year. Checked it yesterday evening again. Nothing has changed. So if you're saying at some point, okay, now I'm I need those features that the Pro version brings, then this is basically what you have to pay for it. And it is licensed by the number of concurrent users. So if you want to add 8 satellites, you don't have to purchase 8 licenses, but you only need to license your master node. And that is something that I personally think was awesome back when the cluster was released, because you could suddenly scale your labs to a huge amount of servers and you only needed 1 license. So that's something really, really cool. Especially if you have your EVE server somewhere at work and between the nodes, there is some sort of, let's say you have some security zones in between. There are some ports that you need to open, of course, so that the master can talk to the satellite. I've listed them here. After the session, I will also share the slides so you can read all of that again. And you need a working DNS. That's also very important because, if not, stuff will break, definitely.
There no need extra license for cluster.
Yeah. Yes, that's what I mean. Exactly. You just need the master Pro license, right? Yeah. And like I said, you can combine these flavors. So you have let's say you have your EVE master, that's a bare metal node. You have your satellite that's running on a VM, on an ESXi server. You have one on the Google Cloud platform, and maybe even one just for fun, just to see if it works on your laptop. And that, again, allows you for scaling your labs. You can simply throw in more servers. Sometimes, usually around January, February, some of the servers get cheap on eBay because usually at the end of the year, some of the organizations throw out their servers and purchase new ones. And that's usually when you can find them relatively cheap on eBay or on, I don't know where you can shop these things. I usually go to eBay. And yeah, whenever you see one, just grab it, add it, and you can scale your lab even more. And especially if you're running a lot of instances with VQFXs or Juno Space or multiple extra servers or JATP, you need some resources because your CPU will be busy handling those devices. And this is a slide how that could look. Basically, if you have a topology, you could run your core or your fabric on the master instance, and you can have your Abstra on one satellite, your JATP on one satellite. Actually, that should be satellite 02, and maybe a VSRX cluster on the satellite 03. And you can also select that on what cluster you want to run, which node. Basically that allows you to scale these labs even more. Then you also need to consider how will you access your EVE server? I mean, you could theoretically simply open the port towards the internet. Someone will be grateful because someone is always scanning. And if they find some web server running, they are always grateful. So I wouldn't necessarily say that's a good idea. Usually what I see folks doing is simply use IP whitelisting to access it, or use a VPN in front, have your EVE server in some sort of DMZ running, connect to it via VPN, and then start labbing. And you need to check how many concurrent users need access to EVE, because that's basically how you license your device. If you're saying this is just for me, you're fine with the base license. It will come with the 2 concurrent administrator users. If you say, okay, I have maybe some colleagues who also lab, or I have some customers accessing it, you need to have a rough number in order to license that accordingly, because they won't be able to log in if the session limit is reached, right? Then you need to also consider how other hardware talks to your EVE server. So, excuse my bad drawing skills. Let's say you access your EVE over the internet and you have some hardware lab that you can't virtualize. You might need to think of a separate link for a management network that you use. Maybe you have a DHCP server running in your lab that your organization uses, or you have some sort of traffic generators that you want to connect to your EVE to test these devices. or you already have a full-blown AD running somewhere, or you have a hardware appliance of a JATP or space. That is something that you need to consider, especially if you have different zones, and yeah, always make sure to put some thought into that. It's not just about throwing in a server and bringing it into the internet. Usually that comes with a lot of thinking. Like at the end of the day, you really need to think about, what do I try to achieve with this lab? And what kind of dependencies do I have, basically? And yeah, it was mentioned at the beginning, what about a backup? What if you update your server? Let's say while you're updating, there is a power loss, and now your Ubuntu isn't booting anymore. And in worst case, you can't recover it for some reason. What do you do then? So always make sure to have a backup, a license backup, also a file backup, so that you still have your nodes somewhere. So in case your server crashes, if you have a lot of nodes that can be like 3 to 4 terabyte, make sure to save that somewhere. And because later you will regret if you haven't done that. So what I've prepared for today is we basically will soon see the console where we are trying to install our EVE-NG. We will mount the ISO file that I have downloaded from the EVE website. And basically, I will show you how easy it is to install the server. If you like and you have a VM running somewhere, you can simply follow. Just go to the EVE website, download the ISO file, and start labbing. And later we will also see the initial setup that you will have once the server boots up. My original plan was to install it on this DL360G8 server. However, one of my hard disks crashed, so I will use the VMware workstation today. I will also show you it's recovering in the background, so maybe it's fast enough so that we can at some point just switch over. But in order to not lose time, that is basically the backup plan that I have. Also, the scenario is we haven't installed anything, so we're now starting from scratch. We've made up our minds, we have sized our server accordingly, and now we want to start, installing the server. So this is basically what the session is about. We start at day 0. Nothing has been done yet, and that's where the session comes into play. So we will simply access the virtual console. We will mount the ISO file. You can also burn it to a disk if you have a DVD drive in your server. Usually the newer ones only come with USB, so you most likely either will dump it to a bootable USB drive or simply mount the ISO file. That's way easier. And like I said, this is the community edition for this session and the pro edition that will be covered in the sessions 2 and 3. Here is also the link where you can download the images. And you also need to make sure, because the server during the installation will connect to the EVE repository, that you have access to the internet. So at least one connected wired port with internet connection, so that it can fetch the latest updates and basically run the installation routine. So I will now go ahead and switch to our console. So I think you should be able to see the console now. While this is running, I can, usually when you're dealing with these servers, being it from HP or Dell, they usually come with something that's called an ILO or ID rack. Is it for Dell? As far as I know, that is basically something that you can access, where you will have some sort of console access and remote console access without being near the device. So in this case, I have the integrated HTML5 console, and now I can access basically the screen of the server. And as you can see, it's still installing in the back because this disk array is broken for sure. But that is how you would start to install it. There's usually an option where you can simply insert the ISO files. That might vary depending on the version that you're using or the vendor that you're using. For Dell, it will definitely look a bit different than for HP, or for Fujitsu, it will look a bit different, but that is something that you can see in the manual. So basically, you need to mount the ISO file so that during the boot up process, you can select, okay, I want to boot from this disk. And then you're basically able to start the installation. And that is basically what you will be greeted with. So once you have deployed this ISO file and booted up for the first time, you will be greeted with this screen. And some of you might recognize this. This is the Ubuntu setup screen, because the installation or the ISO file will do two things. First, it will install, in this case, Ubuntu 16.04. And once the installation has been done and the server reboots for the first time, we'll also see that soon, it will download all the necessary files for us. And at the end, we will have a running EVE without doing any sort of manual interference or whatever. So this has been simplified a lot lately. So I remember when I gave this talk like 2 years ago, there was some sort of scripts that you could download, and you can still do that. But if you're new to EVE-NG, that is basically the easiest way to start with EVE. So let's go ahead and select English here. So you will be greeted with installing EVE as a VM or as a bare metal. So we will go ahead and install EVE bare. So, and while this is loading a bit, maybe we can have the last poll for today. What I want to know a bit more what you use EVE-NG for. Like, do you mostly use it for POCs or for config validation, or are you planning certification and just want to know EVE? So, and while that is running, I will go ahead and select the language. I will select English. We are in Europe here. This is in Germany, where I'm located. That is okay. It will then detect the keyboard layout. That might also vary depending on what type of keyboard you have. Okay, you know the keys, that's it. In the next step, it will try to connect to the network. We will also see that soon. Yeah, basically, this is, some of you might recognize this if you're working with servers. This is basically the standard Ubuntu installation. So the ISO has been modified to do some sort of post-install scripts. So this is basically the usual setup routine. So if you're used to installing Ubuntu servers, there really is no surprise here. In this part, I mean, you know that I'm crazy about IPv6, but in this special part of the network, I don't have IPv6, unfortunately, so it will use the normal v4 DHCP. Shame over me. I will name the server EVE-NG. It will then ask me for the time zone. In our case, that is now Europe, Berlin here. Okay, that is where the server is located. And again, these settings will change depending on where you're installing your server. And basically, that's just your flavor. You can select whatever you wish. In that case, I'm always using the entire disk, and I'm setting up LVM. Why am I setting up LVM? This makes it very, very easy to add new disks later. So let's say I'm starting with a server that has 2 hard disks because that was expensive enough. And maybe I'm planning for the next year to purchase even more hard disks from time to time. That is basically why I would select the setting up with the LVM, because that makes it extremely easy for you to add more disks and get them into your EVE. So we will also do that. We will select the disk, and now it will tell me, okay, this is it. If you're going one step further, I will remove everything and start. So I will select yes. Yes, we want to write the changes. Now it will ask us how to partition the disks. And again, this is nothing that you need to change. It will try to use the whole disk. So we can also hit continue here. And it will now give us an overview. And again, it will tell us now that everything will be destroyed. So we say yes. So as you can see, it's formatting the disks now, and now it's copying the data to the disk. So this needs a little bit of time. So yeah, we figured we play a fun little game with you, a little Kahoot game. So Christine, maybe we can start that.
Absolutely, Christian. Let me switch.
Perfect.
I'm gonna grab the screens. I wish we could
Yeah.
do like a split screen, but we're not able to do that. So I am going to switch back to my screen for just a few minutes. What I wanted to do is just spend a minute or two here with our intermission, just going through some of the training offerings that Juniper Education Services provides. So on the left here is our Juniper Open Learning Program. This is the program that offers free training for all 6 of our associate level certifications. And we also provide a 75% off voucher for your exam for each of these 6 certifications. So it's definitely a great program to participate in for those of you that are still considering certification and you're not sure which tracks to go to pursue. I always recommend visiting the Open Learning page so you can see the different options that are available for you. For those of you that are more advanced level, we do have plenty of courses available that include labs. These are both instructor-led and on-demand courses that are available to you. We have some recommended courses depending on the tracks that you're pursuing, but those are just the recommended ones. We have hundreds and hundreds of courses available on various different topics. So definitely check out those learning paths when you get a chance. And then lastly, Christian mentioned this earlier. This is the All-Access Training-Pass. If you do plan on taking more than one course, I highly recommend that you look into this pass because it basically gives you unlimited access to all the courses, the Juniper delivered instructor-led, as well as all the on-demand courses for an entire year. And you also get one exam voucher that you can use towards any written exam. That could be an associate, specialist, or professional level. So I'll share the link afterwards to this all-access training pass. Here's just, before I wanted to jump into this one, I saw in the poll that 72% of you are using EVE-NG or the labs for certification purposes. So I just wanted to spend a minute going through this track. For those of you that are studying for the exam, I wanted to put out a poll here and see which ones you are pursuing. So let me stop this last poll and let me know. Which certification track are you currently pursuing? Routing and switching, data center, security, cloud, automation and DevOps, Mist AI, design. Great. Love seeing all of you folks pursuing your certification and taking all the training offerings that we have. But regardless of which track you're focusing on, the labs really are the best way to put your skills to the test and get some hands-on experience, right, with a lot of the conceptual things that you are studying. So I just wanted to mention too, when you run into issues in the lab, turn those into learning opportunities, right? The whole troubleshooting aspect of it really is the best way to really understand how things work behind the scenes. So don't give up, relax, and then you can go back to your problem and figure out how to resolve the issue.
Yeah, and I mean, troubleshooting is fun, right? So once you encounter an issue and you really struggle with it, you will remember it for the rest of your life. So
Absolutely. Great. So I did want to just mention here, once you take your exam and pass your exam, it is active for 3 years. And it also renews all of your associate level certifications, so you don't have to worry about, renewing your Junos, your security, your cloud. Once you pass any exam, it does renew all your active associate level certifications. And if you did pass any of the advanced level, for example, if I pass the JNCIP SP, that will renew anything beneath it. So you also, for that track, as you move up the advanced levels, it renews anything below it. So just something to make a note of in case you were not aware of that. And then I know 3 years seems like a long time from now, but there are 2 ways to recertify. You can take the same exam or any advanced level exam in that same track, and it will renew your certification, like I just mentioned. And this is just an example for cloud. You can also renew through course attendance. So like I mentioned, we have recommended courses, but for most of the certifications, you can take other related courses that are on this list, and those will qualify as a course that you can use to recertify as well. So I just want to mention that. And then lastly, you might have noticed this badge on social media, so I just wanted to briefly talk about it. We have our 531 program currently offers discounted vouchers as you move up to the advanced levels. So in addition to the associate level vouchers that we provide with 531, if you already have 5 associate level certifications, you can put in a request to get a voucher for 3 specialist level exam vouchers. And then similarly, once you've accomplished having 3 specialist level certifications, you can put in a request and get that 1 professional level exam voucher. So I just wanted to mention that because it is a good opportunity for you to advance your skills, and hopefully this can help facilitate all that. All right. How are we doing on the installation, Christian? Do you need
Awesome.
maybe 5 more minutes or so?
No, it's finished already. So
okay,
we could either do the game now or later, or we can continue with the installation.
I think let's continue.
Yeah, maybe, if I share really quick.
Yeah, why don't we go ahead with the installation and we can wrap up with the game.
There will be another installation thing that we have to get. So okay, so basically what it did, I'm also showing that. The first thing that it already asks is, do you want automatic updates? So usually when I'm building my EVE servers, I don't select the automatic updates because I want to be the one who installs these updates. I want to know when there have been some changes, because nothing is more frustrating when your EVE all of a sudden stops working because some automatic update in the background maybe did not work as planned and it crashed your whole server. So I always make sure to select no automatic updates. That was the first thing that it asks. And the second one was, at the end of the installation, it will ask you if it should install the grub bootloader on the hard disk. And again, if you've installed Ubuntu before, no surprise there. Yes, of course, we want that because this is our bare metal server and the only thing running on it is this EVE-NG. So there's no dual boot on that bare metal server. So yeah, that's basically why we select yes when it asks to install the grub bootloader on the hard disk. And as you might have seen, these are the default options. So again, you don't need to change anything during the installation. Every time it asks something, just go with the default and you will be fine. And at the end, it will show you this, finish the installation. It's now complete. So let's go ahead and select continue. And now basically the installation has finished. The system is rebooting. On a bare metal server, this would take some time because usually all these RAID systems need to spin up again. And what we will soon see is this is the standard Ubuntu that you see. And now basically the post-installation script will run and start to, as you can see, fetch the latest updates, fetch the EVE packages and install everything. So soon we will simply be greeted with the login screen of our EVE server It will also tell us the IP, how to access EVE through the web interface. And from there on, we can either go to the web interface after doing the initial setup, or use PuTTY to access our EVE server via SSH. And we need that when we want to throw some images at it, because this is the empty EVE installation. EVE is of course not sharing any images. The images need to be provided by you. You can download them. Junipers, for example, are available as a trial. I will also cover that in the second session, how to access these trials to make sure that you have these images in your EVE. But by default, you will never see an EVE server with nodes already uploaded or some images already pre-installed. So if you see that, this is probably not a valid EVE installation. So always make sure to download the official one from the official EVE website. There are some counterfeits here and there, but I would strongly avoid using them because there are some really shady stuff going on there. So always make sure to stick with the original one. And as you can see, it's installing everything. I don't need to do anything. We simply let it run for some time. And once it's ready, we will be greeted with the installation screen. So Christine, do you have something to share, or should we just wait? Or
I wanted to do the Kahoot game. So maybe this
Awesome.
might be a good opportunity for that. So let me
Yes.
grab the screen back.
Perfect.
All right. So for those of you that want to play our Kahoot game, please go to your browser and go to kahoot.it and enter this game pin. It will ask for your email. That way I know who to email our prize to. And what we're going to do today is we are going to give 3 vouchers, 3 exam vouchers to our top 3 winners. And unfortunately, Juniper employees are not able to receive these vouchers. And there is also a limit of 1 voucher every 6 months. So please make a note of that. All right, so as people are joining, got a nice crowd here. Switch my screen here. Don't worry, this is nothing too difficult or complicated. It's almost a game of speed because the questions and answers are super easy. Are you gonna play too, Christian?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna play too. I wonder how many users this Kahoot game can take. I never actually.
There's no limit, actually. I had asked.
Perfect.
I wanted to make sure, but they were not aware of any limitation, at least from our team. But it does handle quite a bit. I know my kids use this in school all the time. And it's pretty fun because you can do it live like we're doing today. And you can also do it offline. So people can play a game, you know, at their own pace, that sort of thing. So, okay, let's give it 10 more seconds for those that want to. Oh, thank you for the Kahoot Limit Pro is 2,000 users. Wow.
Okay.
Okay. I
But
think
we're safe.
We're safe. All right. Okay, I am starting the game, and I think you can still join once the game starts. So why don't we go ahead and do that? Our first question. Multiple choice. What are the benefits of Juniper Open Learning? Access to free training, earn up to 6 JNCIA certifications, 75 discount voucher for associate level exams, or all of the above? All right, let's see. Great, most of you got it right. I think a lot of people choose the first one because it is a right answer, right? But you just instinctively choose the first answer, but not without reading the others. But the answer
do I say guilty here? I just wanted to be quick.
Right. I see it happen all the time, but I'm not trying to trick anyone. But yes, the answer is all of the above. Those are the benefits of open learning, and definitely take advantage of them. Even if you're not pursuing any certification, there's so many courses that are available for free. These webcasts are for free, and all these videos that we create. Definitely take advantage of those so that you can learn more about the Juniper products. All right, let's see how our standing looks like. Close game.
Wow.
Stellar hair, glowing pigeon, green turtle. All right, it's still early. Let's see. Question 2, what are the benefits of the All-Access Training Pass? Access to all Juniper instructor-led courses for 1 year, access to all on-demand courses for 1 year, 100% voucher code for any written exam, or all of the above. So this written exam is associate, specialist, or professional level. So great, most of you got that answer right. Those are all benefits of the All-Access Training Pass. And I'll share the link to it towards the end of the webcast so you can see how to sign up for that. All right, Green Turtle is now in the lead, but still a close game for everyone else. Next question, how long is a Juniper certification active before it needs to be renewed? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or it does not expire?
I wish.
All right, most of you got it right. So it is active for 3 years. Let's see. All right, Green Turtle's got the lead. And this is more of a follow-up question. When I pass an exam, it renews any lower level certification in the same track and any associate level certifications that are active. We just talked about this. I think someone asked about it on the chat as well. True or false? All right, most of you got it right. So when you do pass your exam, it does renew any lower level certifications in the same track and any associate level certification that you have. All right, Green Turtle, Snowy Rhino is right behind you, and Diligent Quail. We got a few more questions left. You can recertify through exams or through course attendance. True or false? I used the cloud example earlier, but you can see here security has a few more courses that you can use for to recertify through course attendance. All right, the answer is true. You can retake the exams and renew your certifications, or you can attend a course that's on the list, depending on the certification that you're renewing. You can attend a course and that qualifies for your renewal. All right, we've got 2 more questions left.
Green Turtle is still fighting.
Yeah, multi-select. So how do you unlock a 531 badge on Credly to share on social media? Earn 5 associate level certifications, earn 3 specialist level certifications, earn 1 professional level certification, earn 1 expert level certification. So this is, you can select all that apply, but I hope the picture helps answer that question. All right, most of you got it right. It does stand for 5 associate, 3 specialist, and 1 professional level certification, which is great. And we've already seen a lot of folks sharing that on LinkedIn, on Twitter. So hopefully you'll be next. All right, Dandy Squid, where did you come from? All right, let's see. We've got our last question. What is the name of the operating system used in Juniper Networks devices? I did not mention this, but I hope that you all get this answer correct. I should have put a funny answer there. I will really throw everyone off. All right. One person did not get it right, but that's okay. I'm happy that 99% of
well, it depends, I would say. With Evo, I mean, it's still Juno's Evo, but I can see why he selected Linux, maybe.
Okay, got it. All right, let's see. Our voucher winners are Snowy Rhino comes in third place. So make sure, I will email you, but make sure maybe just take a screenshot just to make sure we can capture that. Champion Cat, I believe, is number 2, and Dandy Squid is number 1. Congratulations. Wow, you came up from behind and really took the lead there, Dandy Squid. So congratulations. I have all of your emails here in the back end, so I will send out an email today. And now, Christian, why don't we switch over back to you?
Sure. Yeah, and here we are back with the login screen after the installation, and actually with something that some of you approached me with, why is my EVE-NG not running? As I told you earlier, we're installing that now on a VM, but that can also happen on your bare metal server. You need to make sure that your bare metal server exposes the virtualization settings towards the Ubuntu and your EVE-NG. There is a setting, either if you have an Intel-based CPU, it's most likely called Intel VT. Sometimes the naming is a little bit different, but it's basically the virtualization extension. Or if you're running an AMD server, the AMDV. So if you get that message, make sure to go to your BIOS settings. Again, that will change from vendor to vendor, depending if you're using Dell or HP or whatever vendor you're using for your server, and make sure that you have enabled these settings. This will most likely be somewhere in the white paper, and it will tell you how to enable it. So let's go ahead. The default login is root and EVE, and once you log in, it will start the EVE-NG setup screen. So the first thing you need to do is to set up a new root password. So let's go ahead and do that. And yeah, now it basically starts with this routine. So the next is the host name. Usually, if you have a single server, you can just leave it at EVE-NG. If you are running it with multiple servers, then you can use a host name that you like. But I'm selecting EVE-NG here. And of course, we're not at example.com. Use DJ and CIEEU. And the next thing it asks, that is basically, at first, when we installed it, as I said it before, we use DHCP, but maybe you want to use a static address. And even if you have configured a static address in the Ubuntu setup, it will still ask you, should I use DHCP or static? So I will now select DHCP because this is our lab and show environment. But again, if you want to set a static IP, and usually I do that because when I'm permanently installing my EVE server, I want to make sure that I always have the same IP, right? I don't want to check every time, okay, what IP did the DHCP server assign to my EVE now? So that is where I would select the static, but to make it a bit more simple and just to show you how the setup works, I will select DHCP here. The next is you can select an NTP server. If you don't have one, you can simply leave it empty as it says. But if you have an NTP server running in your environment, then you can put in the IP of your NTP server and it will fetch all the time from that. And then how can this be, it says how can this VM, but how can your server and your EVE access the internet? I have a direct connection here, nothing is filtered, but maybe, especially if you're installing that at a workplace, maybe in a DMZ, you need to go through a proxy. So again, make sure to select, depending on your environment, how your EVE-NG server connects to the outside world, and then simply say, okay. And as you can see, it's basically saved all these settings. It will reboot. And once it's up after the reboot, that will go relatively quick here. We will be greeted with the IP that we can use to connect to our EVE. So I will go ahead and open my web browser. As you can see, we already have the nice EVE logo here. So the installation worked. Everything is fine so far. So let's wait for the boot up. And again, depending on the type of server that you're using, there might be some messages coming up. So don't be afraid of that. So, and as you can see, we have 192.168.80.134. So this is basically our environment now. So I've basically connected via HTTP to my EVE server. You can also use Let's Encrypt and HTTPS, of course, but again, I would not recommend to put it directly somewhere accessible in the internet, or at least do some filtering, some IP whitelisting, because you really don't want someone else to mess around with your EVE server while you're not looking. And trust me, the big bad internet really is big and bad. So the default here is admin and EVE the first time you log in. As you can see, we have the community edition, so I can either select the native console or the HTML5 console. That will affect if I'm accessing, let's say my VSRX, for example, how I will access that. If I'm using the native console, it will use the telnet settings of my environment that I have configured, and I can use PuTTY, for example, to access my nodes. If you're using the HTML5 console, everything will be done in this browser window. So you don't even need to have anything installed, not even a simple telnet client on your machine. You can do everything in the browser. So once we sign in, the first thing I usually do is go to the system status page to make sure everything is up and running. We can see that we have UKSM and CPU limit to save some resources, and UKSM to save some of our RAM. As you can see, we don't have any nodes yet, so everything will still be 0. And you will also see how your disk usage is looking like, how your swap is looking like, and the CPU power used. That will be interesting in the sessions 2 and 3, because once we start to power up all of our devices, you will see that the CPU can go quite crazy. So if we go to the management tab here at the top, we can go to the user management. And as you can see, there is the default admin, the EVE-NG administrator, and let's change the password. It's clicked. So, and again, that is something that you can select for yourself. You can also add more users. And this is basically the role is the administrator. Hit edit. So and now the new password has been set. So if someone accesses this server, he can no longer log in with admin at EVE, but instead for the admin user, he would need the password that I've just set. And as you can see, this EVE server is now running. So what we did is we grabbed a completely empty server. We simply mounted the ISO file, let the installation routine run, and we're good to go. It asks us 2 or 3 things about our environment, like NTP servers, or do you want a DHCP or a static address, but that's it. So installing EVE-NG is really, really easy, and as you can see, really, really fast. So I get a lot of questions how to install EVE. Basically, you just need the ISO. It's really that simple. And now you can go ahead and add a new lab. Let's call this Juniper Lab. You can also add a description here for your convenience. That's on session 1. Myself is the author. And once you hit save, it will load this lab, and now you can start to add objects, nodes, and networks. So that is basically what you will always have. And with the Pro edition, that is what we'll be using for the sessions 2 and 3. You will see some more options here. So I could go ahead now and add an object. It will now ask me what object do I want to add. So if I select node, you can see that a lot of different vendors and boxes are supported. If you look at the Junipers alone, you can see a lot of those things have already been added. I think in the latest there is even Abstra is not there. Okay, I will show that in the third session, how to create custom templates, how to modify them. So if something is not showing here, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't run it. It's just not in the default node templates. So if you don't see it,
the only visible one is VPC. Scroll down.
Yeah.
VPC, you can add it. So it is included by default. Down.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You mean default? Yes. Exactly.
Yes, and you can start it, and you can show a console. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Let's do that. Great idea. Yeah. So the VPC comes with EVE. So let's go ahead and start that. CRT. So and now I'm connected with my secure CRT to this VPC. So that is basically when we select the native console, that is now we are connected to my laptop's secure CRT because that's what I use for Telnet and SSH. If I would have selected the HTML5 console, let's do that as well. Then we will see that everything is done in the browser. HTML5. So if I click on the VPC now, you can see it's now also connected to the VPC. If I'm happy, let's do that again.
Somewhere.
I love live demos. Let me try something again. Let's go to the HTML5. There we go. Okay, this could be my workstation set up here. So like I said, it's not necessarily the best idea to use that in your VMware workstation. So yeah, and as you can see, I don't have connected any client now. I'm simply using my web browser. And you can access this from any PC now. So as long as you have access to the EVE console, you now have access to basically everything that you use here. And what I meant in the beginning with it's easy to connect things, let me add another VPC. I can simply use the drag and drop system and simply say, okay, I want to connect them. Depending on the node that you select, you will, of course, have more interfaces than just ETH0. And if you hit save, okay, there's our link. And with the Pro edition, you can even do that while your systems are running. So that makes creating labs and designing labs extremely easy. I don't even need to look under the hood for this connection. There is a virtual switch down here that handles the connection, but I don't have to bother with that anymore. I simply see my connections here. They are connected to ETH0, and it's just working. And especially if you have bigger labs, like I said at the beginning with the ESX, you need to create all these different vSwitches and name them accordingly. That can get quite messy. And with this solution, it's just extremely easy. Also, if you're adding nodes, and let's say we want to add 13 at once, do that with ESX. It's not that quick. So yeah, now I have added 13 boxes and can all connect them and basically create my topology. And once I'm ready to run that topology, I can either do a right click and select start, or I can simply go to more actions and say start all nodes, and that would basically spin them up all at the same time. If you're having big labs, that is something that I will cover in sessions 2 and 3. It might be a good idea to configure a delay time so that they don't start up all at the same time, overwhelming your CPU, because then your lab becomes extremely unresponsive for a long time until everything is booted up. So you can set a delay here so that it will boot them up one at a time. But that is something that we will cover in the sessions 2 and 3. So this session was about the basic idea of EVE, the setup. And the next session will cover how to upload the images from Juniper to your EVE, how to connect your nodes with each other, how to run these labs, how to modify these labs. And the third session will be about how to create your own custom templates, how to fiddle with the options that you have, and so on and so on. So yeah, I will be here for at least the next 14 minutes to answer some questions if you have some. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this session. Basically, the live part was showing the installation, so the next one will even be more interactive, where we can simply jump in and test certain stuff. Because I simply don't want to do this just another PowerPoint slide session, but to have a live thing as well, because that's what you learn the most from. So I hope you enjoyed this first session, and yeah, if you need anything, as always, feel free to drop me a mail or send me a DM. Thank you very much, Aldis, for being here and for always helping and supporting, and you guys are doing an awesome job.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Christian.
And of course, Christine, thank you so much.
Oh, no problem at all. Yeah, I think I speak on behalf of everyone in saying that you're so thorough with, your steps and your tips and suggestions. So a huge thank you for taking the time to share all that with everyone today. Thank you to everyone, especially for those of you that are, wanting to try to build this on your own. Thank you for attending today's session. I did want to just share the schedule of our upcoming webcasts. Let me grab the screen back here. Part 2 and part 3 are on this schedule. So let me type in the webcast schedule on the chat. So as Christian mentioned, we're going to have session 2, same time, same place next week on February 16th. And then the Wednesday after that, we will have part 3 of this session. And I shared Christian's social media links in the chat, but you can also stay up to date with any training or certification announcements via Twitter and LinkedIn. We also have this nice Learning Bites playlist on YouTube, where we have, I think, over 400 technical videos that are about 5 to 10 minutes long. Definitely check that out and take a look. It covers a broad range of topics related to Juniper. And if you have questions after this webcast is over, we also have a training and certification community on the Elevate platform. So you can ask any questions you have there. I'm going to copy paste the link here on the chat. But we have a nice mix of Juniper subject matter experts, as well as other students or certification candidates, other community members that are pretty active on there. So take a look and see what kind of questions people are asking, or to post a question yourself. So all right, so that pretty much concludes today's session. Thanks again, everyone, for attending. We hope you found the information useful, and it can give you the knowledge required to get started with EVE-NG, for a variety of Juniper-related use cases. So you will get a webinar survey once you exit, so please take a few moments to give us your feedback so that we can improve our future webcast sessions. We'll hang around in the chat for a few more minutes, but yeah, we hope to see you again in a future webcast. Have a great day, everyone, and thanks again, Christian and Aldis, for being here today. And thanks, everyone.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Yeah, and again, guys, if you're starting to get certified and lab and